Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Legal Nightmares Are Us with your host, Diana Davison. On March 24th, former Canadian celebrity Jian Ghomeshi was found not guilty of all sexual assault charges in his first trial. There's another one coming up in June. I haven't rushed to make a video announcing that detail, his acquittal, because the verdict was easy to predict. Everyone with any common sense who followed the trial knew that he could not be convicted. The only question was whether or not the judge would properly address the lies and deception of the three women who had made the accusations. All three women were caught lying under oath and willfully misleading police, the Crown, and the court. To let the gravity of that sink in, we're talking about a man, Jian Ghomeshi, who could have been sent to jail for a life sentence, and Lucy DeCoutere, the only woman who can be named, told the third complainant the trial would be theater at its best, and that as an actor, she was prepped to take this on, no shit. DeCoutere and the third woman exchanged thousands of messages, laughing about wanting Ghomeshi to get fat and bald and saying, "It's time to sink this prick." None of their lies would have been exposed unless the defense had been able to independently find the evidence of their scheme. So keep that in mind as I continue. The public, the police, the prosecutors, and the judge were lied to and manipulated so these malicious, spiteful women could put Jian in jail for life. As Christy Blatchford said in her March 24th article, Ghomeshi verdict was magnificent compared to trial by press or social media. It was with a blessed minimum of horse manure and obeisance to cultural politics that Ontario Court Judge William Horkins Thursday acquitted former CBC Golden Boy Jian Ghomeshi of a raft of historic sexual assault charges. And Horkins properly, but nonetheless bravely in the current climate, placed the responsibility for the collapse of the case squarely where it belongs, with the three women who were Ghomeshi's accusers. Blatchford is right. Judge Horkins' decision is bold. It is bold for a judge to call a liar when that liar is a woman claiming to be sexually assaulted. Yet that's what happened in this case, and that's what these women are, liars. We need to keep using that word when we think of these women, instead of allowing them to continue spreading their lies in major newspapers. And that's what these liars are being allowed to do. The moment the trial ended, Chatelaine published an exclusive interview with Lucy DeCoutere in which Sarah Bosveld publishes DeCouture's character attack on Marie Henein, Ghomeshi's lawyer. It was quickly followed by Ruth Spencer handing a column in The Guardian over to DeCoutere, where Lucy was allowed to publish an unquestioned statement reasserting her lies from the trial. Spencer didn't give the statement any journalistic analysis. She didn't interject any journalistic integrity into the story. She just gave Lucy the space to continue her slander campaign. Lucy DeCoutere was found, based on proven facts in a court of law, to have lied to the public, lied to the police, and lied to the courts, yet The Guardian gives her a chance to repeat these lies after the fact. It's stunning. Understand something. Jian Ghomeshi was found not guilty of sexual assault in a court of law. Lucy DeCoutere was found lying in a court of law. If nothing else can factually be said about this, we can say that Lucy is a liar. She just hasn't been charged and convicted of perjury. Yet. So let's go back to the Chatelaine article. Lucy begins by stating she was terrified when she walked into the courtroom. She says, "I've never been more scared of anything in my life." Yet later in the same article, she's asked if she was worried after the first day with Henein's cross-examination. Henein ended that first day in court with a cliffhanger, alluding to a conversation you'd kept secret. "Did you worry all night?" Lucy says, "Oh my God, no. I went and had a huge Chinese meal with friends, took a Zopiclone smoothie, and went to sleep." "You weren't worried that she was going to make you look like a liar in court?" she's asked. Lucy says, "It didn't actually cross my mind because I wasn't lying. I knew she had something and she was going to come at me swinging in the morning." Okay, now that is a problem. Lucy was lying. The judge even has a section in his judgment titled "Additional Deception Revealed in Cross-Examination," addressing Lucy's lies. Sarah Bosveld offers a bracketed note in the article, but didn't include that important detail. Most of the Chatelaine article is devoted to asking Lucy to give credible explanations for why she behaved like a lovesick stalker after telling the court that she tried to avoid intimate contact with Jian Ghomeshi. Why? Why would you do this? Sarah, every explanation DeCoutere offered in court was found by the judge to be not credible. You know that because you were there. No new explanations were proffered for this article. All it did was give Lucy another chance to come up with a better lie. I find it hard to see this as responsible journalism. The author was in court when the judge declared DeCoutere's story to be deceptive and not credible, republishing Lucy's lies without advising the reader that Lucy was judged to have been deceptive and not credible in a court of law is, at the very least, reckless. The only good thing that came from the Chatelaine article was the news that Lucy DeCoutere is full of self-loathing and shame. That is good news. Before I move on to the reprehensible article in The Guardian, I'm going to briefly visit Sarah Bosveld's secondary exclusive interview with witness number 1. The main purpose of this article, in my opinion, is to inform the public that the anonymous accuser now has a website, and the article potentially will help drive traffic to her new business. Bosveld wrongly states that the woman's fuzzy recollection of details, such as the color and make of Ghomeshi's Disney car, were used to discredit her. What the judge actually said in his decision, in a section called The Love Bug, is this. One of L.R.'s clear memories was simply and demonstrably wrong. She testified at length about Mr. Ghomeshi's bright yellow Volkswagen Love Bug, or Disney car. This was a significant factor in her impression that Mr. Ghomeshi was a charming and nice person. However, I find as fact that Mr. Ghomeshi did not acquire the Volkswagen Beetle that she described until 7 months after the event she was remembering. As Bosveld is quite aware, the make of the car wasn't just a small detail. This accuser claimed to have made her personality assessments of Jian based on a car he didn't even own yet. She claimed she trusted him because of that car. It wasn't just a minor detail, it was an integral component of why she went on a date with him in the first place. The accuser was not fuzzy about the car details. She was extremely clear about what car Ghomeshi was driving. She was actually more clear about what car Jian was driving than she was about her claims of assault. Those things had some fuzzy, sketchy details. The car was not fuzzy to her. It's one of the few things she claimed to be sure about. And yet it was a lie. He didn't even own that car. This is probably the most significant aspect of this woman's testimony in terms of assessing her credibility and determining that she was in fact lying. He didn't own that car, and that's the only reason she went on a date with him, apparently. Most of this article is spent talking about how scared the woman was and what it was like to be questioned by Marie Henein on the stand. I think that is a point of interest for a lot of readers. What's it like to be caught lying in court by one of Canada's best lawyers? Again, Bosveld chose to publish statements about Marie Henein's character despite advice from the law firm. As irresponsible as I find Bosveld's articles, at least she did seek out and publish comments from the people being attacked. Not just from Marie Henein, but from the Toronto Police Services. At the same time, she failed to advise the reader that the woman she was interviewing was found by the judge to have deliberately breached her oath to tell the truth. I think it's important for a journalist to inform readers that they are listening to a liar. Back to Lucy DeCoutere and the most offensive article I've seen to date on the Ghomeshi case. Award goes to Ruth Spencer of The Guardian. Ruth Spencer previously published her own story about Ghomeshi and how he's a very bad man. Actually, she just told us how she dated him for some time and he wouldn't have sex with her, which convinced her that he's a creep. So Ruth tells us that after dating Jian Ghomeshi for about 5 months, amid the nights out at premieres and fancy dinners, something wasn't right. Jian refused to have sex with me. "You're not ready," he told me over and over. I shrugged it off. Some people wait, right? Maybe he just really liked me. Maybe something was wrong with him, and he wanted to wait until he knew I liked him to reveal it. Now I know what that was. Well, no, actually, you don't. Again, I feel the need to point out that Ghomeshi keeps getting attacked by women he refused to fuck. So Ruth published an article on March 25th. This article was written by Lucy DeCoutere without any journalistic intervention or attempts to seek comment from the people being attacked in the article. Lucy starts by claiming, "I spent 12 months preparing to testify about one of the most painful experiences of my life, only to be mocked in open court." This is in direct opposition to the facts. On many occasions, and she did something like 18 interviews, in all of those interviews, she informs the public that what happened to her had almost no impact on her life. It was almost a trifling experience, and that she was really doing this because she wanted to help the other women. And she thought she was best placed to do this because her experience was not traumatic at all.
And also my story, to me, to talk about it, it's a little upsetting, but it's not traumatic. I wasn't terribly hurt by him.
She then uses the words fact and what he did to us to reassert charges of assault. These same charges that Jian Ghomeshi was just acquitted of. This then becomes a description of what it's like to sit in a courtroom and have the judge call you a liar. We're meant to feel very sorry for her. When Lucy writes the degradations of assault were at least private, this is an assertion of criminal allegations that were dismissed in a court of law. Why is Ruth allowing DeCoutere to repeat allegations found to have been deceptive? Lucy then describes Marie Henein as notoriously cutthroat. Henein is actually just known for being extremely good at her job, exposing lies. And if you aren't lying, she's got no throats to cut. It's that simple, Lucy. In her re-dramatization of what it was like to be in court, Lucy implies the case was lost because the prosecutor wore a bow tie and Marie Henein wore stilettos. DeCoutere is allowed to state after Ghomeshi's acquittal that Jian was protected in court from the very women he once found so easy to dominate, to slap, choke, and punch. There is no editorial note that these are allegations and that the allegations did not hold up in court. Apparently, after acquittal, the accusers are allowed to publish their lies without even the disclaimer word alleged anymore. Let that sink in. Journalists must use the word alleged when referring to criminal charges that are unproven. They did so up until now. Now that Ghomeshi is acquitted of all charges, Ruth Spencer republished the allegations without even using that word anymore. The rest of the article attacks Marie Henein's character as a lawyer and as a person. Ruth Spencer has no editorial notes about Henein's response or any indication that she even tried to contact her about what was being published. What did Henein do exactly? Lucy complains about how Henein kept putting email after email in front of her, showing the intensity of DeCoutere's lovesick obsession with Ghomeshi. This went on for a year, her obsession with him, so all Henein did was present evidence that Lucy had lied. I have little doubt that Lucy DeCoutere didn't remember the actual words that she had written in numerous love letters and emails to Jian Ghomeshi. I'm sure she forgot how vividly she displayed her infatuation with him and her failed romantic pursuit of him. What we can be absolutely sure of is that she didn't forget the reason she wrote those emails. Lucy DeCoutere desperately wanted Ghomeshi to have sex with her. She pursued him for a year, and it is impossible that she forgot how she felt. She just forgot what she wrote. In her own emails, she describes herself as stalking him and even suggested that they get married. While the exact words might have slipped her memory, there's no way she forgot this obsession with him. Her memory of the exact wording of the emails is not the problem. It's what the emails tell us about how long she pursued Ghomeshi after he rejected her. Lucy is burying her lies by focusing on whether or not she knew Ghomeshi still had her emails. She didn't think he still had the emails, therefore she didn't think it was important to tell police. What she did know, but didn't tell police, is how badly she'd wanted to have sex with Ghomeshi for over a year. And she also knew how angry she was that he never fucked her. DeCoutere's article finishes by saying that she'd been made to look complicit in her own assault, and how sad she is that Jian is free. What assault? Ruth Spencer allows this to stand without editorial note. The claim is an allegation, dismissed under proper examination in a court of law. There was no assault, and they don't even say alleged anymore. I didn't think newspapers were allowed to publish accusations of crime after the accused has been acquitted. Apparently, not only can they do so, they don't need to use the word alleged. They can state his guilt after acquittal in a court of law. That's what this article is doing, stating his guilt. Is anyone else furious about this? The Globe and Mail ran an article on March 25th titled, "Court Not Arbiter of Truth, Lucy DeCoutere's Lawyer Says." Actually, Jillian, it is. The court is the arbiter of truth. You're a lawyer. You should either recognize that or be disbarred. Jillian's main complaint is that because Ghomeshi didn't have to testify, the court only heard one side of the story, and apparently that is unfair. Well, Jillian, the only side of the story the court heard was the women's side, and their story turned out to be riddled with lies. Holes so big you could drive a yellow Volkswagen Beetle through them. Jillian would have us believe that only Ghomeshi got to tell his story in court, while the actual one-sidedness was the opposite. The voices of women were the only voices heard in this trial, and they were heard to be lying. The reality here is that the women were caught being so deceptive, Ghomeshi didn't have to testify. He didn't have to tell his side of the story. Go back to law school, Jillian. The CBC aired interviews with all three women on The National, and I found their coverage to be responsibly done, aside from calling the women victims at the beginning. They mixed the women's statements equally with findings of the judge that the women were caught lying under oath and why they were found to be not credible. When airing footage of women who have been judged not credible in a court of law, it's important to keep reminding the audience that they are liars whose testimony should be given no weight. The CBC did that fairly well. One of the things they captured on film in The National was the third witness admitting that they'd acted maliciously.
5,000 Facebook and text messages. Some of the snippets read out in court took aim at Ghomeshi. It was a plank for the defense to suggest collusion.
If we were colluding to do something, say take his money or try and hurt him, I can understand. But all we wanted, really, if you heard what we said back and forth, really what it comes down to is we just wanted him to feel a little bit of humiliation. That's it. That's it.
Pressing criminal charges in order to humiliate someone is malicious. The other thing that became apparent to me, and I want to make sure you understand this as well, is that these women are, every one of them, complaining that they weren't properly prepared for court because they thought the police would tell them what evidence Ghomeshi had against them. Listen carefully.
I didn't understand the process, so I really thought that there was going to be a conversation that we would have between me giving my initial statement, an interview where they would test the evidence, ask me tricky questions, and draw stuff out.
When I first went into this, I thought the Crown was my lawyer, my defense lawyer, like a lot of people do. And when you meet with the Crown, one of the first things he'll say is, "I'm not a defense lawyer." It's not their job. I expected a conversation at some point between giving my statement and going to court. I met with them twice before trial started. It was like the first time we ever talked about what happened was in court.
But Judge Horkins called those arguments excuses. Navigating this sort of proceeding is really quite simple. Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
So they think it's terrible that they didn't know about the defense's evidence before they were actually sitting in court. It's incredibly important that the defense is not forced to share their evidence with the police, because if someone is lying about you, trying to put you in jail maliciously, you need to be able to catch them lying in court. If they knew Ghomeshi had their emails, they would have changed their lie to fit the evidence, and they couldn't have been caught. We want to be able to catch people if they lie in court. If someone lies to the public, the police, the prosecutor, and the judge, as all three of these women did, we must make sure that the defendant can expose them for what they have done. These women were all properly prepared for court. They were told to tell the truth the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and none of them chose to do so. Because they are liars. They got caught lying, and they should be treated as liars. They should not be given further platform in mainstream media to continue repeating their lies. The only interview they should be granted is to answer how it feels to be caught lying in court, and they should be continually reminded in the interview of the fact that they lied under oath. If these women couldn't tell the truth under oath, they most certainly won't tell the truth to a reporter, especially when they're granted anonymity. I'm going to finish off by addressing this idea that Lucy DeCoutere was a very successful, busy person who only took time out to come forward with these allegations for some altruistic reason. All right, so what we're about to listen to, I've edited down from about an hour and a half long podcast that Lucy DeCoutere did with a family friend on a show called Stereo Dynamite. In this podcast, I'm going to show you evidence of what DeCoutere's life was like. She was not some successful actress who was kept very busy and had nothing better to do with her time than press false allegations against an ex-boyfriend. This is, to start out with, a description of what Lucy's life was really like and the series of failures that led her to this point.
Actually, originally I worked in documentary production for a long time. And that was just a hunk of shit. Like, documentary became something that I was jaded by. And I remembered, after I had briefly forgotten, that I wanted to teach people stuff. So I applied to a bunch of different schools, and I ended up going to school in Australia. So I had some savings that I sunk into this. I went hugely in debt. I went to surfer's paradise. I mean, let's face it, if you're going to go to school in Australia, live on the beach. But I did this master's, and then when I came back, long story short, I could only work a few days a week because the teaching industry is very hard to break through. Plus, I would get parents calling administration, commenting on me being there. And if I had a problem with a person, that's because they were a person who had problems with all of their teachers.
Sure.
I wasn't making any money. Like, I was in debt. I was like struggling. My hair was falling out because I was stressed. I was trading cooking lessons at night with people for meals. I was teaching all the time. I was tutoring. I was doing all this stuff, and it was not manageable. And when I finished, I was at that point, I was like 38, and I was like, this isn't going to get better quickly. And I borrowed a bunch of money from a friend, with an agreement to pay her back, and got myself out of trouble. And I was like, this is not working. I thought maybe it could, but it's not. So I have to do something else. I applied for every job in the world. Restaurant. I didn't want to work in film. I couldn't do it. And Trailer Park Boys wasn't happening anyway. I couldn't do it. I had to do something else, something drastic. And if I couldn't live the dream, and it was my dream to be a teacher and to live in Halifax and have a dog and do all of that, if I couldn't do it, I had to really unplug and do something else. And I ended up joining the Air Force. I applied on a whim, and I was very candid in my interviews. I didn't pretend to be anything I'm not, and they still hired me.
All right, now I'm not accusing Lucy DeCoutere of manufacturing these allegations just of her own accord. I'm going to play for you a description by Lucy, which I think is probably fairly accurate on how her mind works.
I'm not a creative person. I can't make something of my own. I have to work with someone who's made something. I've never been an idea generator, ever. That's never been my forte. Like, when I was going to grad school, I would work with people on projects and we'd make fun stuff. And if someone has an idea, I can certainly help them to augment it and make it more bizarre or more whatever they want.
So next we're going to find out that it's not really Ghomeshi Lucy's mad at. It's a different ex-boyfriend. And she seems to, in this interview, have trouble separating the two. They flow together quite nicely for her.
No, it's good. When I first, like, this whole thing with Ghomeshi, he's not part of my life. I sort of don't care. Because it was such a long time ago, whatever. When I knew him, he's not part of my everyday. I don't draw hearts over the eye or whatever. But it has forced me to do a few things. It's forced me to address some deficiencies I've had in my life. After I dated him, years later, I was in an emotionally abusive relationship with a guy, And when it ended and I realized what I had been in the middle of, which was a web of very complicated brain fuckery, candidly, when I came out of it, I was like, I'm going to deal with this by riding my bike 1,000 kilometers and I will be fine. I wasn't. And then I rode another 1,000 and I wasn't. So then the stuff with Ghomeshi came and I got mowed over. But I was mowed over by the compassion and warmth of strangers, 90% of whom had had something really bad happen to them, where they were raped or something. They didn't necessarily have to elaborate. I could fill in the gaps. So I had to become really honest with myself about what had happened with this guy, not Ghomeshi, the other one.
And there you have it. As Lucy has already explained, she's very good at filling in gaps. And that's what she's doing here with her story about Ghomeshi, to the point that she is willing to blend her experience with someone else and turn it into a story about Ghomeshi.
It's really like after I got out of this relationship with this guy who was emotionally destructive, I really was hoping that I would, after I had my own recovery, work in an environment where I could help other women transcend bad relationships. So this has sort of allowed that to happen on a bigger scale than I expected, maybe. You know, I didn't expect I'd get a hashtag, but hashtag no big deal. But like, that's great. That's great, because I was so, this guy took my voice away and he made me feel less in a way that was so surgical.
So just for fun, how good is Lucy at making up stories?
My mother, bless, left her parents when she was 5. Something, Hitler. So...
Now you'd think that I just edited that together out of a bunch of random clips. I did not. Go listen to it if you want to verify if all this is in context. It is. She actually said those words in that order. So let's get back to, how did Lucy DeCoutere end up making allegations against Ghomeshi when it was really just her other ex-boyfriend she was mad at?
You know, really just comes down to, it was amazing that somebody had finally, you know, gone on record and started this, you know.
Yeah, but I went on record because Nobu Edelman asked me if that was something I was cool with doing. So I have to credit him, actually, because I didn't think that, I mean, maybe I would have approached these guys, but Nobu's really smart, and he recommended that maybe I would have something to say that Jesse would be interested in, because I didn't think I did.
Now, Nobu Edelman is a good friend of Lucy DeCoutere's and obviously a good friend of Jesse Brown's. He's the one who contacted Lucy. Lucy has told us previously that she contacted the media because she read the story. That, as it turns out, is also not the truth, which is not surprising considering Lucy DeCoutere is a liar. So her friend Nobu hooked her up with Jesse Brown, who apparently was sweating buckets.
And I spoke with Jesse Brown recently, and we both had the same conversation. But whilst I was talking to him, I was like, I don't think he's even paying attention. I thought he was maybe like making a sandwich or something. Meanwhile, he was typing every word, and he was like, fuck, my career's not over.
So how did Lucy, with her uncanny ability to fill in the gaps, help out Jesse Brown?
Again, for whatever reason, maybe because I'm just known enough and my story was just bad enough that it was believable. It's not like Christy Brinkley was like, oh, I got dragged around by my ear or something. Like, that's ridiculous. But me, with my situation, that's not that crazy. So that could be, yeah, okay. Then that jump makes sense.
So Lucy came up with a story that she didn't figure was too crazy, but it was like severe enough. That's how you frame somebody for something they didn't do because you're mad at another ex-boyfriend.
I'll tell anybody whatever.
And Jesse Brown, I'm coming for you next. This is not all I have on you.